So this is how Hangul is helping to preserve foreign dialects. This is the table of contents with the topics we're going to be talking about. The introduction of Hangul and the brief history of how the language was created, and the simplicity and accessibility, which goes on to the second topic, which is application in foreign dialects. The phonetic representation of how you can use Korean alphabet to represent other sounds from other different languages, and the benefits and challenges, the pros and cons of using a foreign language for the written system of another language. How long would you think that it takes the average educated person to learn how to pronounce and read the Korean written language of Hangul? Most people would think 5 months to 10 months. And this quote directly from King Sejong says that a wise man can acquaint himself with them before the morning is over, so basically in a singular day, and a foolish man can learn them in the space of 10 days.
For the introduction of Hangul, we'll be talking about the brief history of Hangul. For the history of Hangul, the Korean script, it was created under King Sejong during the Joseon dynasty, which lasted from 1393 to 1897. He was a wise and compassionate ruler, and he was deeply concerned with the welfare of his people. So one of his greatest concerns was that the fact that common people were unfamiliar with the complex Chinese letters which were used by the educated, and thus they weren't able to read and write. At the time, Chinese script was used exclusively by the intelligentsia of the country. It couldn't fully capture the essence of Korean thoughts, spoken language, or emotions. So this gap in communication between the ruling class and the common people troubled King Sejong greatly. This is a quote by King Sejong. Being of foreign origins, Chinese characters are incapable of capturing uniquely Korean meanings. Therefore, many common people have no way to express their thoughts and feelings. Out of my sympathy for their difficulties, I have created a set of 28 letters. The letters are very easy to learn, and it is very fervent hope that they improve the quality of life of all people. Initially, human Hongam contained 28 letters, though only 24 are used today. This new language was simple yet very effective. It allowed even children and foreigners to learn the language very quickly. How Hangul is an oral language, a brief linguistic analysis of Hanguk.
What made this language prominent and considered one of the easiest languages to learn by linguistics is when analyzed. King Sejong smartly thought about how language worked and how specific sounds were made with the way your mouth was shaped. He based all the characters on how the mouth looked. So for example, saying the word ka or kanadara, when you're saying ka, your velar, which is like your top of the roof, you would touch it, which would form a yolk in your like mouth. Same for na and shit. And then bilabials like and glottals like o, they would be based on how the lips looked. And this is a chart of the basic letters in the Korean alphabet. Application in foreign dialects. So this is a quick video. But the Cha-Cha tribe looked to preserve a fading language that had been passed down orally, but not through writing. This is important as a lot of the oral languages in history have been forgotten, and they rely solely on one or two representatives. So now that the younger generation exposed to what written language can do and the convenience of it, now they'll rely more heavily on written language and Hangul. They might even develop their own written language, and that stands a test to time rather than a single representative. because they can die out quicker. So this is another article, and I'll switch to that one. So this one was a lot shorter, and I'm not gonna be too in-depth to this because a lot of this was already covered in the video. The script that Ryan shared to me was basically a little bit more in-depth, but I can't really explain it that well. So the city's name is Barabar, and like I said, the language is Cheche, and a minority tribe in Indonesia has chosen Hangul as its official writing system. So this is recognized from all the leaders. And even if you like searched up on Wikipedia or on a website, then it would come up. Now that the population was 60,000, because that video was a little old, and I also did some research and it is now 60,000, they're basically on the verge of losing the entire native language. And all the captions in the video that we watched earlier, they were all made from an English translator who also spoke like in the community of Barabar, and they just happened to speak English. So if communication problems like that exist in the future, nobody can even understand this language, as no one would be alive or no one would have enough knowledge to transcribe the language because of how small it is. And this is the most prominent case in Barbar, but there's also smaller cases in other languages in other countries besides Indonesia that also relate to this problem. This was one of the quotes that Ryan put in. There would be a meaningful case in history if the Indonesian tribes managed to keep its Aboriginal language with the help of Hangul. And Professor Lee Young, who helped create the Korean textbook for the Indonesian tribe alongside Admitir, I forgot his name, but the pioneer, said it was a historical case for the Korean alphabet to be used preserving the traditional language of foreign society, and he hopes that the case will serve a meaningful opportunity to show the excellence of Hangul. The benefits and challenges, I saw a lot of strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. So us as a group, we made a SWOT analysis. So this is the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of using a written language such as Hangul for the representation of our language, Xiacha. Some strengths were there can be standardization and the accessibility. It was very easy to use, and even anywhere from the leaders of the community to younger kids could understand this as long as they were taught by teachers. The cultural integration can promote a cultural exchange and understanding, as you saw with the dual typing on a lot of the signs in the video. And technological support, although technology isn't as prevalent, anyone who is helping can facilitate teaching and learning of these dialects. Now, on the opposite hand, weaknesses were some of the native speakers may be resistant to change, and this is probably of the older generation, as they wanted to remain they want to keep their cultural identity, but this might be destined to change, as evidenced by a lot of the documents and how well this has been working so far for the community. Some foreign dialects may have some sounds and structures that are even harder to translate, and these probably already have been died out a lot, but there will always be some problems when transcribing that language. The resource allocation might run down if people don't find enough necessity for this, but I don't believe that'll happen anytime soon. And loss of originality, which would be some like idioms or sayings, like for example, in English, raining cats and dogs. This might be lost and diluted where people don't understand what that means anymore. Some opportunities of cultural preservation. This initiative can document and preserve endangered dialects. Educational programs can be greatly increased if, for example, teaching the language of Xiacha to a young kid, having a written language aside of it would be very useful. Partnerships such as sponsors or other donors can help provide support and resources. And increased awareness, for example, this news video from South China News morning news, this helped greatly raise this problem. And finally, some threats to this would be dominance of major languages. For example, first they used the Latin language and they found out that didn't work, but some other countries may have some trouble and obviously turn to the bigger languages, and that might limit their use and relevance of smaller languages like Korean, obviously. Cultural dilution, this might lead to some cultural dilution as talked about in the video, and some people are worried that it might turn the Barbar and the Indonesian small tribe like way too Korean. But as long as they maintain their cultural identity alongside the language and only using the language as a tool, this shouldn't be a problem. Some political and social resistance could occur as some officials could debate against the use of Korean, but this is also not a problem for this specific case, but it might be in other prominent cases. And funding challenges, sustaining long-term funding for dialect preservation project may be difficult, especially if there's multiple tribes and multiple language, like they said, there were 700 languages in the Indonesian province. So this is our bibliography. These are the articles, and some of them were used for images. Thank you.